I turned back just in time to see the figure crawling through the broken window, its inhuman grin widening. My first encounter in the Witch Belt. When my supervisor handed me an assignment in an obscure Philippine province, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The name of the place barely registered on the map, and the flights were infrequent just twice a week. To make things worse, the team offered no briefing. I was flying blind, left with only my supervisor's cryptic warning. Don't eat or drink anything unless it's at the event. That place is strange. Strange didn't even begin to describe it. He explained that the area was part of what locals called the Witch Belt, a territory infamous for folklore creatures like the Manananggal and Tikbalang. Stories I'd heard as a child, but had always dismissed as superstition. I landed in sweltering heat, greeted by a man holding a sign with my name. He introduced himself as the event organizer, but I couldn't shake the unsettling thought. I didn't know this man. He could be anyone. We drove down narrow, bumpy roads, past dense groves of banana trees and quiet villages. The town itself felt frozen in time. At the inn where I was billeted, I was given a small, sparsely furnished room at the end of a dim hallway. The window overlooked a vacant lot cluttered with trash and flanked by banana trees. Something about the room felt off. I tried to sleep early, hoping to shake off the unease, but the silence was oppressive. Then, at exactly 3 a.m., I woke to a violent jolt. The foot of my bed had shaken so hard, it felt like someone or something was trying to lift it. My pulse raced as I grabbed my phone, its faint light showing the time. I sat up, listening for any sound. The window rattled slightly as a breeze picked up, rustling the banana trees outside. Shadows danced on the walls, but nothing seemed out of place. Desperate for reassurance, I turned on the television. Its glow bathed the room in cold light, and I sat there, wide-eyed, waiting for dawn. By morning, I convinced myself it was just my nerves. I went through the day's work, avoiding anything offered outside the event, as my supervisor had warned. The organizer seemed friendly enough, but I couldn't shake a lingering sense of dread. That night, exhaustion overpowered my fear, and I fell into a heavy sleep. But once again, at 3 a.m., I woke up this time to the sound of soft shuffling outside my window. My heart pounded as I crept to the window and peeked out. At first, I saw nothing but the vacant lot. Then, under the pale moonlight, I spotted movement among the banana trees. A dark figure crouched low to the ground, its back turned to me. It moved unnaturally, as if its joints bent in ways they shouldn't. My breath hitched as I watched it rummage through the trash, its clawed hands pulling at scraps. Suddenly, it stopped. Slowly, it turned its head toward my window. What I saw froze me in place. Its face wasn't human. Its eyes were black voids, and its mouth stretched unnaturally wide into a grin that revealed rows of jagged teeth. I stumbled backward, knocking over the chair. The noise seemed deafening in the still night. I scrambled for the door, heart hammering, when I heard the organizer's voice from the hallway. "You saw it, didn't you?" His tone was calm. Too calm. I opened the door, expecting him to reassure me, but he stood there holding a small, blood-stained bundle. "It's already marked you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Leaving won't help now." Before I could respond, the sound of shattering glass came from my room. I turned back just in time to see the figure crawling through the broken window, its inhuman grin widening. It was late summer in 2006, a time I'll never forget. Jake, my boyfriend at the time, and now my husband, had just returned from a 12-month tour in Kuwait with the United States Army Reserve. We had planned to get married as soon as he came back. Following Hmong tradition, he came to pick me up and brought me to his parents' house. When we arrived, his father performed a blessing ritual to welcome me into their family. We stood at the front door as my future father-in-law held a live chicken and moved it in a circular motion around our heads. He chanted, asking their ancestors to accept me into their household. The moment felt deeply spiritual, like I was stepping into something much larger than myself. Afterward, we were ushered inside to meet the rest of the family. It was a joyful day at least, until that night. That night was when I encountered the paranormal for the first time. The house was crowded, bustling with 3 families living under one roof. My father-in-law and mother-in-law shared the space with Jake's oldest brother, his wife, and their children, as well as the second oldest brother and his kids. Jake and I squeezed into this already packed household for the night. The house itself was a modest 2-story home. As you entered, there was a small landing with stairs leading up to the main living area, and another set going down to the basement. Each staircase was no more than 7 or 8 steps. The basement, where we were told to sleep, had hardwood floors throughout. There was a bunk bed pushed against 2 walls, and a twin bed in the middle of the room. That evening, Jake and I stayed up late with his nephews, Alex and Daniel, swapping ghost stories in the living room. It was past midnight when we finally decided to call it a night. Since space was tight, Jake's parents had said we could sleep on the twin bed in the basement. His nieces, Emma and Sarah, were already asleep on the bunk bed. We didn't bother turning on any lights as we made our way downstairs. Feeling our way through the dark, I crawled into the twin bed first. But as I started to lay back, an unshakable chill ran down my spine. The hair on my arms and neck stood straight up. Something wasn't right. I felt an overwhelming urge to look up, and when I did, my heart stopped. There, on the top bunk, was a black figure, a small, shadowy form of a little girl, staring right at us. She was completely black, with no discernible face, just tangled, messy black hair hanging over her shoulders. Her size told me she couldn't have been much older than a child, but her presence was anything but innocent. She stood there, not against a wall or surface, but directly on the mattress, as if she had stepped out of the darkness itself. Terror surged through me. I yanked the blanket over my head and began shaking uncontrollably. Jake, confused, tugged the blanket down and whispered, "What are you doing?" I grabbed his arm and whispered urgently, "Look at the top bunk." His reaction was immediate. He froze, then scrambled into the bed beside me, pulling the blanket over both of us. For a moment, we were paralyzed by fear, huddled under the covers like frightened children. Finally, Jake broke the silence. "Forget this. I'm telling my dad." Without waiting, he bolted up the stairs. "Wait for me," I screamed, chasing after him. We burst into the living room, where Alex and Daniel were still awake. Tears were streaming down my face as I tried to explain what had happened. Meanwhile, Jake told his dad. My father-in-law didn't hesitate. He grabbed a broom from the kitchen and headed down to the basement. From upstairs, I could hear the rhythmic sweeping and soft chanting. He was performing a Hmong ritual to cleanse the space, using the broom to sweep out any bad spirits from the room and corners, guiding them toward the door. The chanting, in the old language, felt powerful, almost like it could push the very air out of the house. When he returned, my father-in-law reassured us that everything should be fine now. He told us to sleep in Alex and Daniel's room instead. My oldest brother-in-law, however, was skeptical. "Are you sure it was a little girl?" he asked, twisting red fabric in his hands. As he questioned us, he made 2 red bracelets, which he tied around our wrists to ward off spirits. But I was firm. It wasn't a shadow, I said. Shadows need walls or floors. She was standing on the bunk bed, right in the middle. Jake backed me up, saying he had felt an eerie, bone-deep chill the moment he saw her. That night, as I lay wide awake in Alex and Daniel's room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been greeted by more than just Jake's family. It was my first encounter with the spirits, and as I would come to learn, it wouldn't be the last.